Hello, hello. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Take Note podcast with Keli Ananda. And today we have a very special guest, Dhanaraj Prabhu, our dear friend that we've had the good fortune of being connected with this year. It's actually been quite magical. I've been thinking about it. A friend of ours, Leela Vrindavan, has put together this group, and I just feel like I was connected with so many wonderful and lovely people this year. And Dhanaraj is one of those lovely persons. So we're very happy to have you with us, Prabhu.
Dhanaraj, it's literally a privilege, a pleasure, and a joy to have you here. And you are our first official guest on the Take Note podcast.
Yeah, it's the feeling is mutual. Ananda told me that it was just going to be like hanging out, just pretend that no one's listening. So yeah, for me, this is a very nice and long overdue hangout.
That's what we're doing. We're just
And
hanging out.
we're all. I'm going to take my scarf off because I feel like we're in a boy band right now. Or something.
It's actually kind of cold in here. I could wear it like this if you want, so we could all have variety. I could wear it like this.
Free.
I just think
those
so
monkeys,
people
see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, but with scarves.
Kaylee
just
has to
don't-
wrap around his eyes.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think we're in a cult or something. So I'm just gonna.
It's too late. It's too late.
I've got some purpose you should see.
Yeah, I gave up on not trying to appear like I'm in a cult a long time ago. It's just gonna be who I am.
Okay, what's happening, Ananda? What's the
we're
schedule?
here. We're here today because this Take Note podcast is really for us and you at home or at work or wherever you are listening or seeing or both. To really, as the title suggests, take note. Take note of the wonderful and beautiful creative potential energy that all of us have as living beings, and how that is innately part of our journey towards higher and more substantial experiences in life, higher and more substantial experiences of truth. And this is brought to you by the Bodhika platform, which is an amazing initiative really helping connect creatives and thoughtful persons to the experience of bhakti. There's a lot of philosophy about bhakti, and really what's almost more moving oftentimes, or what can be more moving, is the direct experience. Me and Dave Madhav were actually talking about the other day that we are emotional beings, right? We can have a whole bunch of philosophy, but we're still going to make decisions based on our emotions, right? And bhakti doesn't negate emotions. Actually, bhakti is all about how do we utilize and put in motion our emotion.
I like how you brought the arm in there.
Yeah, the arm. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to take note, and Keli and I were discussing about all the wonderful devotees that we would like to partake in a conversation of such. And one of the first devotees that we thought of was Dhanaraj. So
we
Dhanaraj,
literally couldn't be in better company right now.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this, you couldn't be in better company right now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You've completed the meaning of life. You've made it here with Dhanaraj.
So I see 7 people watching on Facebook. Maharani Vrinda Devi is saying Hare Krishna. I want the other 6 of you, as of right now, to please write in. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to sing a song. Is that okay?
Nice.
I'm going to sing a song because that's what we're going to do. We're going to sing a song. And then people will see this live video. They're like, hey, they got guitars and stuff.
Guitars and scarves. I'm at the right
Guitars and scarves. My wife is watching, Sri Radha Devi.
That's
Wow,
big.
that's auspicious.
You've made it.
I've made it. Meanwhile, actually, while I do this, I'm going to tune this guitar up. I'm going to introduce Dhanaraj Prabhu a little bit, very briefly, if you'll allow me. Am I allowed, Keli?
Yes, very much
Okay.
so. You are. I'm advocating it. I'm encouraging you.
Okay. So this is like the official bio. And Prahlad Nashringa, Hare Krishna Prahlad Nashringa, nice to see your text. Thanks for writing in. So this is the official bio, and then I'll give the heart bio, and Kelly, you can give your heart bio. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. So the official bio is this: Dhanaraj Das studied creative writing at New Hampshire Institute of Art and Bhakti Shastri at the Jaladuta Institute, where he met his spiritual teacher. Hoping to study language deeply in graduate program, he spends his time writing poems, reading and translating classes or books. His eyesight gets worse every year, but that just means you have to stay home and read more books and keep everything close to your face and heart. That's cute.
Hallelujah.
I like that. Yeah, is your eyesight really getting worse every year?
It gets I have to get different prescription like every 3 years, but like that means that it's getting worse every day.
I feel like that's I'm gonna digress a little bit. I'm gonna
Sure.
confess, and if my parents are watching, I think I already told them, but I'm gonna confess something. If I haven't told you, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. When I was young, before I wore these, all my neighbors had glasses, and I thought, man, it would be so cool to have glasses. They look so smart. They got you get different colors and different styles, and I wanted glasses really bad, so I convinced my parents that I needed to go get an eye check, and I cheated on my eye test in order to get glasses.
Wow.
I saw a hot air balloon, and I didn't click it that I saw it.
What a
You heard
sinner.
it, folks.
Huh?
On take the beans have been spilled.
The beans have been spilled, and I don't know if they're watching. If you're watching, write in. I think I already told you, but anyway, that's the fact. That's
Well,
By
you-
hook
one-
or by crook.
huh?
By hook or by crook.
By hook or by
Somehow
crook.
or other you got your glasses.
So now I need glasses. Now I'm like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to wear glasses all the time. This is how karma works. Okay, Kelly, you give your heart bio of Dhanaraj.
Okay. Dhanaraj has actually greatly impacted my life in such a short space of time. And it's very interesting how we came to know one another. As Ananda was saying, there was a wonderful personality called Leela Brindavan. Isn't she wonderful, Dhanaraj?
She's very wonderful. Yes.
From
wonderful, very
1 to
forward.
12, how wonderful is she?
Out off the chart for sure. That's an easy question. Next.
I don't have any other questions. That's all I prepared. So, anyway, this wonderful personality, Leela Brindavan, she created a group called the Creative Collective, and she just had this vision to kind of bring like-minded spiritual creatives together in one place, one sangha, and all three of us happened to be there. And I mean, it's been going for about a year now, and I guess we're not as active as we were at the beginning, but so much has happened in that year, and I've just seen us all grow into such wonderful versions of our potential, and I can see there's so much more potential to grow into. There's deeper depths and there's greater heights. And when I look at Dhanaraj, this is purely coming from my heart, I see infinite, unfathomable potential. And the wonderful thing for me is to have an opportunity to associate with a person like Dhanaraj. And anyway, I don't actually need to say much more because we're going to hear from him in this podcast. But I'm sure you will agree when this podcast terminates, you will feel nourished, encouraged, enlivened in spiritual life. So.
See, Dhanaraj, you thought you were going to embarrass us, but that's not how it works.
Okay.
We turn it around on this show.
No one's going to want to come on the Take
Yeah, I
Note
know.
podcast. Just get charmed for an hour in public. Anyway, sing your song, Ananda.
I'm going to
excited.
sing a song, and I'm
I'm going to
going
mute myself.
Okay. Can you hear the guitar? Okay. So this is a song that I was always wanting to write. It's called Dust and Iron. And it was on the EP that I released almost 2 years ago. Wow.
Can you make your screen bigger than ours?
Oh, yeah, let's
To,
do that.
Showcase yourself.
Let's do that. Let's see. Oh, that didn't do it. Okay, how's this? Nope, that didn't do it either. There we go. But now you guys are not even there. Anyway, we'll just go for it. As a swan takes the milk from the water, as the flower takes the sun from the clouds, as the bee takes the nectar from the flower, as the minute takes the seconds from the hour. Please see my innermost desire, covered in bark, contained in dust and iron. I'm sorry that when I say your name, I don't cry. What's my love for you if I'm still standing here alive? But these are just words. There's a fire covered by the smoke, as the dust falls upon the mirror, as the baby hides within a womb. I'm just praying that my love will be born soon. Please see my innermost desire, covered in chains, contained in dust and iron. I'm sorry that when I say your name, I don't cry. What's my love for you if I'm still standing here alive? I'm sorry that when I say your name, I don't cry. What's my love for you if I'm still standing here alive? But these are just words. Okay.
Bravo.
So I thought we'd get started with just a little bit of music. This is a song that it's related also to our topic. Our topic today being between the word and world, right? As I had called Dhanaraj, inviting him onto this program, and he graciously accepted. And in our discussion, we were talking about how we come from a line of great writers and great poets who in so many ways describe what is in many ways undescribable, right? So what is that bridge that can be built through poetry, through music, through song, through creativity, through the aesthetics, right? That can connect us at least to a portal for an experience, right? So this song is a song that I wrote that really speaks to the intention behind, at least when I, as an artist, why I want to write music or why I want to write poetry or anything, right? It's like the words may be junky, the words may be clunky and weighed down with connotation and pronounced poorly, and I may eat my words when I sing, or I may sing out of key, or whatever may happen, right? But one really wonderful name that I've always been attracted to is Bhavagrahi Janardana. It's a name of Krishna, a name of God. That means he comes in and he grabs the essence from a thing, right? And the examples in that is that, there may be so many imperfections externally, but there's this metaphor that's always given how the swan can take the essence, the most wonderful essence. If you have water mixed with milk, it can take that milk only. And scientifically, actually, they have a chemical in their beak, in their throat, that curdles the milk. If you have milk in water, it curdles the milk, and they spit out just the water in the whey, and they take the protein, the substance of the milk. So in that way, when we offer something, we can trust the essence is being extracted, right? So that in this mood we approach using words, right, to describe that which is indescribable. So, Dhanaraj, I wanted to invite you to kind of start off the conversation with you had shared a quote with me, and maybe you can kind of lead into that quote that you shared from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and kind of explain, how we kind of came to this point in our conversation and why we were both thinking that it'd be a very nice place to go and explore.
Sure. Well, I would like to first thank you too for having me here. I do miss company with both of you. Ananda Murari, I think the first time that I heard of you was, like a madman, you were going down the streets of Denver, inspiring everyone to chant the names of Gauranga. That was the first time that I saw, like, who is this person that, like, isn't dressed in robes, but is like singing better than anyone and like, captured by love better than anyone. That was my first impression of you. So yeah, I'm also very grateful to Leela for being like put me in a sphere that is like in your sphere. That's very nice. Mm-hmm. And Keli, like, I remember what was the song? It was there's a really beautiful song about the moon. Yeah, I would rather. I don't want to be a shooting star. I would rather be a rising moon. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing that music video of yours and like just filmed, like I think it was already like COVID times, but I thought this is a special soul that I'd like to like get to meet. And then Leela satisfies everyone's desires, it seems. So like, yeah, I'm also grateful. I would be remiss if I didn't get to mention that.
There's no dearth of romance on the Take Note podcast, guys.
No, that's essentially that's our subtext.
Yeah.
Take note. Get ready for bromance.
Yeah.
Maybe when there's 5 minutes left of the show, we can get to the topic. But I've still got a few pages left.
Okay. I saw you taking notes.
I did take note that something, before I go on, something that I appreciate that you said was it was a song I was meaning to write, Ananda Murari. You said it was like meaning to write. But before I take your invitation, do you want to describe a little bit of that sentiment, that it was a song that you were meaning to write?
A lot of times, if I can't articulate a prayer, right, I still feel a prayer. Like I feel a prayer going on. Like when you're hungry, you're like, oh, I got some hunger. And maybe you don't know exactly what you want to eat. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you get hungry and you're like, I know exactly what I want to eat right now. Peanut butter, jelly, and pickles. That's like what I'm craving. Other times you may not know exactly.
Are you pregnant? Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Something else you need to tell your mother and father.
You may not know, right? So, I mean, it can be a crude example, but there's this sense of, in my experience, that I have a desire to pray, to say something, to capture an angle, and the good fortune, we'll get into this, I'm sure, is that the writings of the great poets in our line, right, in so many ways capture throughout the Bhagavatam. There's so many wonderful prayers throughout, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, Narottam Das Thakur, Jayadev Goswami, so many beautiful poets that have captured the the unlimited varieties of moods with which the living entity can call out to God, right? And so, fortunately, we have that at our disposal. And there's also a sense personally that I really want to compose prayers like that myself. So, this was a feeling that I was going through where, I feel very imperfect. I'm obviously imperfect, but I feel very inadequate. I can feel very inadequate in my activities, in my capacity to become absorbed, in my relationships with others, in my capacity to serve, in my ability to forego my lower nature, right? So there's this sense of just please take the essence of what I'm trying to do here. That ultimately I'm what I am assured of is my sincerity. I'm certain that I'm sincere and that this is what I want. So this was kind of a feeling. And that song actually originally took birth. I got off the phone call, and I'm sorry, I'm like I'm like talking the whole time right now, but it's your fault, Donna Roger. Why'd you redirect the question to now? It's just you after this. Anyway, I had a conversation with the devotee that I actually first met, who introduced me to the path of bhakti and contemplation, and I was just appreciating the broadness of his vision, and so that was kind of, I wanted like the essence seeker. I remember when I first started wearing tilak, and I would go and I'd meet people. They say, "Oh, what is that?" I said, "This is a clay. It's clay that marks one as an essence seeker, right? That one is looking for the essence."
That's
So,
very nice.
anyway, that was the sentiment behind that song.
I like
Now,
that.
Donna Raj.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about that, and this may be a spoiler, but I'm going to try to lead the conversation to that like that there's something that we want to do before we do it, and then there's the doing it, and that's what the bridge is. The bridge is it begins with our desire to do something, and then through serendipity, happenstance, or through the disciplic succession, or through just inspiration from divine inspiration, like that thing happens. And so I think that that's the bridge. Like, we lean forward with our hope to do something, to reach for God, and God maybe leans backwards to meet us, and that coming together is that creative act, or that like. So that I'm going to try to lead the conversation to that. But I think that because I could relate to that sentiment. Like, I think that there was a poet that said once, I really, and they've written like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of poems. Yeah, Jai, that's nice. Like, they've written hundreds and hundreds of poems, but they said once, I actually am just writing one poem poorly over and over again. It's this idea that like there's really one thing that I'm trying to say, and like you said, but these are just words. That's not really what I feel. So I guess that's a good jumping off point to when you and I got to speak. I had just heard His Holiness Indradyumna Swami. He's doing a wonderful class on the Vrindavan series. If anyone gets a chance, it's heartwarming. And in one of those classes, he cited Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a quote that I hadn't heard before. And I couldn't find the source of this quote. He doesn't give it in the class, but he quotes Bhaktivinoda Thakur as saying, this material world is a dictionary of the spiritual world. So in the same way that, I open a dictionary and I look at the word bicycle, and it says, it's two triangles. One is right side up, the other one's upside down, and it's got two wheels and then a handlebar, and it's got pedals, and you move. And if I like try to jump on top of my dictionary and ride away on a bicycle, like, I'm going to be sorely disappointed, because I'm looking at a word that doesn't have the whole dimensionality of a bicycle. It's like it's a bicycle compressed into the fabric of a paper. And so when you think about that quote of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what is he saying? He's saying that this world now is a dictionary of that spiritual world. So if you imagine these spiritual objects and spiritual emotions and the spiritual person of who is the supreme person, you compress that to a dimension that it's not actually. And like, you know, we might have a lot more dimension than paper. We have 3 dimensions, and some people call time the 4th dimension, but that whole reality is compressed now, and we're experiencing those objects still to a lesser degree that they exist in the spiritual world. And so the what happens when we want to commune, it's great. We're grateful that one of God's names is Bhava Grahi Janardana. We should be very fortunate that this supreme person is just looking at the essence, because if I had to express how much I care about, you know, if I had to express how embarrassed I am that I'm still here, if I had to express how grateful I am to, you know, saints or to friends, I wouldn't, if it wasn't for that person's like kind of kindness toward me, I wouldn't get much out, because like, what capacity do I have, first of all, to understand what a saint is? What's my capacity to understand how indebted I am to my friends who are spiritualists? How much do I even understand how much I should be embarrassed, right? So Prabhupada gave a nice example that your house might be on fire and you may not understand, you may not be able to speak in the language of the people that are around you. But if you just point to that thing and, you know, make a sign of fire in your hair, like, they'll understand and they'll save you. So similarly, you know, Krishna or Bhavagrahi Janardana is saying, you know, this person, like, they're not expressing nicely, or, you know, they're not maybe expressing, I'm not expressing how Rupa Goswami is expressing, but I have been affected by this movement. And so like, something is happening, and it's very nice that that divine person can see like, what's the essence and take it, right? So that's I think step 1.
Can I propose a thought?
Sure.
And just kind of meditating as you were saying that, how there's so many instances in all scripture, let alone Vedic scripture, of a personality coming into contact with divinity and being so overwhelmed by that experience that they lack the ability to actually articulate themselves and show gratitude and you know, pray and such. And there's so many instances like this. And what the story usually goes, that divinity sees the sincerity of this personality and they give them the ability to pray. They give them the ability to connect. They give them the ability to write. And there's so many instances of this in Mahaprabhu Leela, in Krishna Leela, so many places in the Bhagavatam. You see it in like Greek mythology. You know, it's like everywhere. So I guess the thing I want to propose to you, my dear friend Dhanaraj, and hopefully you could provide some clarity, is, as creatives ourselves, or aspiring creatives, these personalities that we hear of are extremely elevated souls. Like, we hear of divinity giving the opportunity to these people and these personalities, but they are extremely elevated souls. And someone like myself, I feel like it's a big claim to say, oh no, it might be a little bit misleading, but I'm not the writer of the words you're reading. You know, that's not kind of, I feel kind of burdened by, almost by that assumption, you know, that divinity is speaking through me, or divinity is giving me an opportunity to be creative, or so I'm just wondering, is that a valid emotion? Is that a valid kind of feeling? Is, you know, is it true? Is it not true? Have you experienced such a kind of conflict or tension within your creative process as a spiritualist and a creative? Yeah.
That's such a good question, Kaylee. Um, I mean, there's two sides of that, right? It's hard to know where to start, but it's always good to start with what Krishna says on the matter himself. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, and this is actually one of the only mentions of the Gita about rights. So Krishna says, you have the right to perform your action, but you are not entitled to the fruit. So this is like, now let's like bracket that for a second and then remember what Srila Prabhupada talked about regarding yoga when he said that yoga is really the ladder that gets a person from the lowest rung of material existence to the highest. So, you know, in some sense, even people that are like atheistic or averse to the idea of a creator, they're practicing karma. They're doing something for a result. And so they're already engaged in learning the system of how Krishna operates. Like karma is a very crude example of how Krishna personally reciprocates with a person, right? So everyone is participating in yoga. That's just like the first thing. Now, what you're saying is interesting because you're asking the question from the perspective of a person that is aware how high you can get. Like at least theoretically, you understand. Like Haridas Thakur, when Chaitanya asked him, describe to me the glories of the holy name and how it is that other entities will be saved. Haridas Thakur is like, I am a puppet in your hands. Whatever I'm speaking is coming from you. Srila Prabhupada in his poem when he arrived in Boston Harbor wrote, you know, like, make me dance like a puppet in your hand. So these very elevated souls recognize that principle that Krishna is saying. You have the right to perform your duty, but you are not entitled to the fruit of action. In other words, and in another place in the Gita, Krishna says that it's actually the modes that are doing everything. And if it's not the modes, then it's Antaranga Shakti. It's his personal energy. So we're always guided somehow. I can't remember the exact verse, but the living entity is only allowed to do three things: think, will, and feel. So Krishna is satisfying the desire. You think I want to make some food, but like the grains have been made by someone else. The instruction was made by Kurma Prabhu or someone else. And like, you're just putting these things in the kitchen and Krishna's giving you the right remembrance at the right time. So if that's the case for even a basic thing like waking up or making food or taking a shower, why wouldn't that be the case for a more complicated thing like creative process, right? Krishna says, I am the ability in man, and I don't think that he's not the ability in women. So Krishna is the ability in people. So any famous person is definitely like operating under this principle that Krishna is actually manifesting his opulence through them. In the same way that any characteristic that I have comes from my mom or my dad or from you or Ananda or anyone else that I met, like any famous person is manifesting one of Krishna's potencies. Now that's like the philosophy and the, you know, kind of like when is the lecture going to end part. But like the very practical thing is where it gets kind of crazy, because I'm old enough to remember when one of the presidents of the United States, George Bush, said that one of his motivations or something that kind of flipped the switch to going to war with Iraq was that God told him. And then there was a musician named Conor Oberst, the lead singer of the Bright Eyes, who wrote a song called When the President Talks to God. And it was kind of insulting of like, you know, what he just said something like, when the president talks to God, are the conversations long or short? Or it's basically like saying, you're claiming to have spoken to the greatest of all people, and this person said something so stupid through your mouth, like that you'll go to war. And so it's like, I think we have a natural, sincere spiritualists have a natural weariness or almost aversion to claiming that they have any kind of relationship or communion with God. I mean, you'll see that in the most advanced souls, they're not publicly saying that like, I'm a devotee of God. They're saying like, I'm a servant of the servant of the servant of God. Haridas Thakur said that to Chaitanya only it was private.
Mm.
He didn't say that publicly. So I think that privately we can know, I want to do something good for you, Krishna. Like, my spiritual master has given me something that I can't ever pay back. And I want to give whatever I have, like everything. I'm just going to put it out of my pocket and put it on the table. However it looks, I don't know. But I'm doing that for you. But anything that I have in my pocket, you gave me. So I'm just giving it back to you. But now when we're in public, we might, talk about things in a more practical way. Like, I learned about how to write poems from my teachers in college. I read a lot of Walt Whitman, and I like T.S. Eliot. And so this isn't mutually exclusive. These are all still potencies of Krishna that he reveals through different people. But I'm not, pointing at Krishna directly. I'm just pointing at other people now to kind of hide that I may be embarrassed that I'm not at the par yet to say something that is worth, admitting that, like, Krishna has to do with everything. But in my heart, I'm hoping that it's good.
I wanted to. It's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to bring it back to the point before the point that you were making before Kelly's question, which was about this ability to will something, right? That you were mentioning, kind of moving towards, in our conversation, moving towards a description of really that I have the intention of doing something, right? And then being able to do it. One thought that came to my mind was how unfortunate and frustrating it would be if we lived in a completely literal world, right? If our world was strictly literal, that what you said is what you meant, and I was thinking that even as sentient human beings, we have this ability to understand paralinguistics. Actually, most of our conversation, most of our experience of each other is not in the words that we actually say, right? But it's actually something in the facial movements, it's something in the hand gestures, something in the tone, right? Context, right? So similarly, how much more is Bhagavan, is the supreme, right? Being able to extract the essence of a thing. So when you're in your experience of writing, in your experience of kind of connecting with that, is that something that you're kind of consciously willing, in terms of like, okay, I want to have like the best intention, or how do you approach? Because I know for myself, when I started writing music again, I was writing music, and then I became a monk, and I didn't really write a lot of music. I wrote like 2 songs while I was a monk, but I wasn't really writing so much. It's so funny. You see my notebooks, and they kind of turn from like poetry and journal entries and things like that. And then like I moved into the ashram and became like, I just took notes. I just kind of recorded, which was good. It was good for me. It was like, okay, I'm like downloading, I'm, consuming divine information. But I know that when I started writing again, I didn't want to just kind of parrot the things that devotees would say. Like, I didn't want to just like cliche like the Hare Krishna thing to say, right? Like I wanted to be a level that there was a level of rawness to my writing. So I guess my question is, how do you approach like your raw feeling as opposed to kind of the refined intention, if that makes sense?
Yeah. That's a good question. I remember having that experience too. Like, before I met the devotees, my journal was any and everything that passed through my thoughts. Like, that was what I was doing during class, afterwards, like anything. And then once I met the devotees, it basically, like, and I think this happens because we see Srila Prabhupada's writing of like how not a word is unnecessary. Every single word is directed, and it's not meandering. And so I have immense respect for him as a writer to a writer, because that's very difficult to do, to to speak with authority means that you have so much knowledge. And so I realized how little I knew. For example, when I say like, oh, I would do a lot of people watching, be like, oh, I think this person is thinking that. And I realized like how much of what I thought and how much of what I thought I knew was just like not grounded in anything. And so the only thing that I know was, the deity is here, that I should wake up early, that this book is important. It ended up being like just very factual, punctual things. Because I realized that's the only thing I actually know about the world now, is that like, that's the only axiom. That's like the axiom that I had, was that like saints know something that I don't. And to the degree that I can assimilate and repeat what they say, then I will actually, I can claim to have any knowledge. I think that that's one thing. So just to like level with you, like I understand that. And I think that as we begin to, like you said in the beginning of the show, realize that our emotions and even our meanderings are also part of our spiritual experience, in as much as we can relate them back to it. In as much as I don't say that my mind wandering is actually how I am, or that that's the purpose of my life, to just have my mind wander, but instead to realize like, my mind's wandering right now. Like, what am I trying to avoid, or what am I trying to think of instead? So to see it as part of a bigger picture of like a mental activity, then it's like whatever.
Who I am is a wandering mind.
Right. Yeah. Who I am now wandering.
Yeah.
I would say that there's like, because it's kind of helpful to work in binary sometimes. So I'll say that there's one type of writing that, like, there's this famous poet, I think she said, and I'm paraphrasing, she said, writing is easy. All you do is wait outside on a hill with a lightning rod on your hand during a storm. And when the lightning strikes you, you run back inside the house. And before the charge leaves your body, you put your hand to the paper. It's very easy. That's all you have to do. So when you break down what she's saying a big part of it is just waiting outside for inspiration. That inspiration is going to come eventually, but if you don't act super quick to get it, it'll leave. So it's almost like, even for that person who is like kind of in the atheist box, or like at least like a non-theist, they recognize that whereas you may have skill to write, that inspiration is still coming from outside. It still doesn't belong to you. So like it won't belong to you if you don't write it down. So that's one way.
It's so funny. Even the word though, inspiration, means that spirit enters.
Right. To receive breath.
Keli, I was remembering something you had told me this last year, that you're like, in order to like write songs, like you have to live life, and something to that effect. Do you remember?
Yeah, if you like, what is there to write about if you have no kind of life experience? If you just spend your, like, you need something to write about, which means you actually need to live a little bit. Yeah.
So I'd say that the second mood is like one of surrender, and I'll describe that. So how do I approach writing, to answer your question, specifically? I'll mention that there was a small poem that I wrote 2 days ago for the appearance day of Srila Raghunatha Das Goswami, and I dedicated some of my time during the day to read one of his small books, Sri Braja Vilas Stava. And so I read the book, and afterwards I felt very grateful to him for writing it. And I felt grateful to, the devotees who had translated it. And then I went to my journal, and I just wrote like a small thing. So that type of writing is my favorite writing, because so everything that we write, like Keli, like you just said, the implication of you should live your life is that you're writing a song inspired by your life, or that's reflecting your life. So my favorite type of writing right now is one that's reflecting the spiritual world. In the same way that, before you meet the devotees, or before you have any knowledge of the spiritual world, all you're writing is you're reflecting the material world. You're reflecting wanting to go to a bar, or wanting to be famous, or being disappointed that you're not, or wanting to have love, or disappointed that you don't. So it's all about that. So I find that if I do my job or if I do my service as an aspiring, devotee of my spiritual master, servant of my spiritual master or my spiritual teacher, I will apply myself to reading and to listening to spiritual, like descriptions of the spiritual world. And if I'm lucky, I will be able to reflect some of that. And I think that that's where I want my art to be right now. I want it to be a reflection of my desire to be surrounded by people like that like really enjoy talking about who God is. So that's different than the first process, because the first process, the lightning bolt is the reflection of the material world, and it's really difficult to be out there waiting. I mean, my wife is a trained artist, and she has to confront a world that is full of competition often, and that's full of a lot of personal motivation for self-recognition. And I used to have to confront that world too. And now my life is so much easier because I'm really just writing because my spiritual master, like recognizes that I write and says, you should write for Krishna. And Prabhupada said that. It's like, if you write for Krishna. So there's so little stress now because I'm not competing with anyone else in the world. Like, I'm just trying to give something that I have. I'm just trying to describe Krishna somehow. So it's like, there's no more competition with anyone. Like, how would I compete against Kaylee's like production of music? Who can write, 70 songs in like over summer? Who can do that? Like, who can be like more bliss than Ananda Murari, like at that moment, like inspiring 20 strangers to say Gauranga? Like, and it's not even a question of that. In devotional life, it's not a question of being better than. It's a question of like, let me be with. Like, whatever you're doing, let me help you do that thing, because you've already been tagged. Raghunath says that, like, you've been tagged by Krishna. Like, you already have that skill. You keep it. Let me help you do it. And in doing so, maybe you'll help me find what I can do that's good. And in that way, we all help each other and we're all helped. And so it's just like, it's much better this way.
May I ask a question then?
Sure.
Because this is all wonderful what you're saying, but there are also definitely struggles in spiritual life and creative life.
What?
And yes, there are. You haven't realized. And I want to pick you up on something you said, Dhanaraj, because with the assumption that we all want to, we all want our creative endeavors and our creative produce to be of some substance, to be of some value to people, to uplift consciousness of others and such. But you did say something earlier about how, perhaps the perfection of spiritual learning is being able to basically repeat verbatim, repeat exactly as you've heard from someone in a certain succession of teachers and students, or that we hear this so often, like, this is the perfection of spiritual life and spiritual teaching, is to be able to repeat exactly without change. That's why the parampara is this exalted gift that we hear about, because it's not been diluted, it's not been changed. There have been gurus and disciples dedicated to repeating exactly, so nothing gets lost. I remember when I first came to the spiritual path seriously, that stopped all my creativity, because I was like, I can't repeat exactly, so and if that is the case, where is the room for creativity? Like, it's so difficult to just pick up the Bhagavad Gita or pick up the Bible and like, I was thinking, I can't write a song like Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra Samaveta, like, that's not going to be a hit song.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that was a huge stumbling block for me, is kind of like, how can I like be creative if there's not really room for interpretation in that way?
Right.
I personally found a way around it with exalted personalities and seeing other examples, but from people I've spoken to as well, this is It's like a common thing, I think, for creatives and spiritualists alike.
Yeah.
Is that something you've experienced, or?
Yeah. But I would amend to that we should be able to repeat, but not, it doesn't need to be verbatim. That Prabhupada wanted us, for example, I think that specifically he said once, like, I can talk to my God brothers like this, or I can talk to people like this because, I'm in the body of a 70-year-old person. Like, he's coming from a world experience that he has authority just on his age to speak to the youth in such a way. But if I'm like, I wasn't even married, if I'm saying like, all married life is nonsense or something, it's like, what do I know about it? So I think that we're supposed to be able to assimilate things. I say that, Srila Prabhupada says Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and you say Krishna is the source of everything. And it's not verbatim, but like those are both true and they're in different words. But I have experienced what you're saying, but I think that the room for creativity is that honestly, I don't know the form that takes, but I know that, for example, there's this one devotee, I forgot what her name is, but she published a Names of God Bible. So what she did is she went in the older text and she reprinted a Bible that doesn't have it doesn't say Lord. It has the actual Hebrew words for God. So it says El Roy, Adonai. It has these names. It's called the Names of God Bible. And I was looking at her work, and she did, for example, she wrote a book that was called A Year Devotional Study into, the great men personality in the Bible. And then another one was A Year Study into the great women in the Bible. And so she's creating new content that is based on this, very recognizable text. And, Prabhupada has written something that like that, those words have not existed in that way before. Like the Bhagavad Gita as it is was not in that form.
I just wanted to say I've heard devotees credit Prabhupada as creating almost like a new language, for the English speaking world anyway. There's like he literally created how would you articulate it, Ananda? I don't know.
Yeah, he created a dialect, kind of I was trying to think in like science experiments when you have to define your terms, right? Like he had to create new terms to convey a message that was buried deep within the ancient and beautiful articulate Sanskrit language. As kind of a funny thing, my wife and I, we actually did a collaboration with a bunch of devotees to collect as many like Prabhupada words or words that we wouldn't know or phrases that we wouldn't say unless we came in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books. I have a whole document somewhere. It was like 3 pages long of words that we most likely would not have come in, at least for myself, would not have come in contact with this type of language that Prabhupada had to wield in order to communicate a culture, communicate an experience of devotion that, like you're saying, it wasn't available before.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, Dhanaraj, but I just I thought that was very interesting what you were saying. I wanted to reflect it.
Let's see what Robert is saying. Because although everything is Krishna's energy, I'm not sure all my music could be labeled as spiritually enlivening for others. Some days I feel that way and some days I don't. Right. Yeah, I mean, I want to bring it back to, I mean, you're specifically trying to inspire creatives. And I think that the analogy that the point that we brought up earlier about the yoga ladder is important. Like we should recognize where we are in a sincere way. And it's like, first of all, there's no point in repression. So Krishna admits that there's no point in repression. Like you should express yourself. And you express yourself to the degree that to the degree that best you can. Like if you're writing a rock song about like, everyone in the world is terrible, and then and it's like, all just power chords all the way down. Everyone is terrible. The drum is just like, constant hi-hat and like triple bass, whatever. And then you meet someone that's wonderful and they like melt your heart. Can you still be like, can you still write that song or still play that song publicly? Everyone in the world is terrible, and like, somebody that's changed your life for the positive. And then, maybe you have someone that's like listening to you, or, then that person that you meet starts saying like, hey, I really like that song. Everyone is terrible. And then you're driving down the street and they see someone's like, hey, you're terrible. And then you realize that there's some responsibility that like people are repeating what you're saying, that you're transmitting a message, that what you see in the world and you're giving back out, people are hearing. So we should be honest about, okay, like, we should be honest. We can't, I don't know if I can write every single thing that comes to my mind and expect that, well, the principle is that everything is spiritual. So can everything that I do be spiritual? There is like any relationship, there's some compromise. Mm-hmm. And I think that like, it's a difficult line, but I think that like anything, like we should just be honest and not expect that we should totally have everything like spiritual and figured out. Ainja Prabhu said that like there's no place in kirtan for guitar, but like, John V. Harrison is reaching millions and millions of people, and there's like guitar in her kirtans. And like, you're going to tell me that like John V. Harrison isn't like, singing like the Maha Mantra in a very spiritual way? Like I would beg to differ. But I think that devotees speak from their perspective of how they understand like their personal advancement. But I don't know if there's schools of thought.
Well, two things that are coming to my mind is, one, in terms of this kind of point that Keli, you were touching on about just kind of repeating verbatim, and there's like something as artists in general, like I don't just want to redo the same thing that someone else has already done, but in reality, like anything that we see in the world, that, even inspiration, but any song that's been created, those songs are being, the content for that song, the content for that piece of art, the content for that book, that writing, the content for that performance, right, has been taken by some influence from outside ourselves, right? And so and it's essentially being repeated. Like, if you look at dancers, like dancers are doing the same moves as so many other dancers. They're putting them in different combinations, right? But still, because they're coming through the filter of the individual, because they're coming in touch with the individual, then it becomes something very unique and special, right? So it's like, there's a purport that I remember Prabhupada says, everyone needs to realize Krishna. Everyone needs to personally realize Krishna. Like, they realize Krishna on their own. In other words, like, even the description of who is God or what is God and how is God and Sambandha Abhi, our original position and all of that, that's being given by a sampradaya. Still, I have to understand that for myself. Like, I have to know that myself. And the other thing I was thinking of is, that pastime when Krishna's walking into the stadium at the wrestling arena, and every single person in that arena is seeing Krishna differently. And it's a valid perception, right? And every one of those persons would use different words perhaps to describe maybe the same word or same words, but still that experience that individual is having is unique.
That's a really nice point. I think one thing that's coming up as well is like, when there is experience behind a word, that word kind of hits harder, maybe, or it's something incredible about Prabhupada's words is that he's got the experience to back up what he's saying. Like you were saying, Dhanaraj, that he can speak with authority because he has the experience of, self-realization. So I can write the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a song 100 times, but it might not have the same effect. That's wonderful. I feel like I could carry on this conversation for another 3 hours or something, but it's already been an hour, so I don't know where we're going. Are we gonna do like a, in gymnastics they do like a somersault and a triple half jelly flip and stuff, and then they do like a finale dismount. I don't know if
Well,
is there something like that.
you know what I'm thinking is that Donna Rajpuru, unless I'm wondering if you had anything else to kind of share, because I think both, I don't know if you were completing an idea, but I also want to invite you to read us some of your poetry. You had brought some poetry, and we'd love to hear some of that and share that with the audience.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to finish with I think Keli and Ananda, both of you do this very well, which is you are creating something new. The experience, for example, in Ananda, when you say, but these are just words, that sentiment, I've heard that sentiment somewhere, the principle of it, but not the detail of it. You said it in an interesting way, but these are just words. And Keli, you're good at picking up like what metaphors or what figurative language is used to describe God, and you carry those you bring that figurative language, which is something that everyone knows. Everyone has heard, the importance of the sunflower and that it like follows like God across the sky, or a lotus or a moon. So and I think that you do that well because, maybe you haven't, or like maybe you don't want to admit that you've seen Krishna personally, but you know that everyone has seen the lotus. You talk about.
Okay, now's the time, everyone. I just want to let you all know I have seen Krishna.
All the beans are being spilled on Take
The
Note.
beans are all spilled, man. Take notes. Spill your beans. No, that's the chit chat. They're spilling the
There we go.
spiritual tea.
I'm gonna write this down. Sorry, carry on, Dhanaraj.
Anyway, so I think that that you're asking the question shows that you're interested in it, but it's also like I would like to say from my perspective, it shows that you're addressing it in the right way. That like both of you in your creative exploits, you are preserving the message that what was the message? That we're small and the divine or the source is very big. That our efforts to reach it are very minuscule, but that it can be experienced in all of the wonderful things in the world. And I think that like that message is very palpable. Ananda Murari, that's like my favorite song on the album, and I think because of all that, it's like very full of movement. So I wanted to finish with that, but I do have also poems that I picked that could be read.
Please share with us.
Okay. Do you mind if I share the screen? Because sometimes I'm going to read some things that are kind of playful.
Yeah. You should have the ability.
Okay, let's see. And then you tell me, share screen. Screen sharing is easiest with 2 monitors. Don't show these tips again. Okay. Application window, your entire screen. Okay, let's do the entire screen, see how that works. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, here we go. You ready?
Okay.
Boom.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Well, this is a nice poem from Srila Rupa Goswami. So this is I'll read this one first. This is I grew up in a family of polyglots. So like if you were at a dinner table with my grandfather, if you didn't know at least 3 languages, you wouldn't be able to understand his jokes. And so like, the punchline is in German, and there's a word in there that's like borrowed from French, and like it's actually delivered in Spanish. So like you needed to work on all those levels. And so this is a poem kind of in response to growing up with him. So it goes like this. Some poema sans podium. Verte stir de te verte tira mi vista y tiro legos lejos en vez de jogar mi voz a você. Porque no llega tu mind mientras no puedo desarmar ni un poco you en mi pozo. As man tiene a cur, por ça I mantengo red that core. Nothing separa y no sé parar el intento de querer hacerlo. Cujos 2 olhos, doce so grande e dan forever hope, je puisse realize vais ver sobre la mer. E não preciso comer poisonous poisson, lleno de mercurio, y no como perros ladrar mis ladrillos al cielo, but como ballenas bailarinas can cantar what aún pido 3 veces nightly, por aún trepide. Be beside me greatly, y grato you arrive, Messi.
Wow.
You know,
That
Kelly, I had sent a message to Donaraj asking him if he would be on the show, and I just kind of spontaneously spoke with my attempt at a Russian accent, and Donaraj spoke Russian back to me.
mm,
I said, "My goodness, does this man speak Russian? He speaks Spanish, Russian." So,
Um,
is there a translation, Donaraj?
but hold on. I just want to ask
Yes.
this idea. Would you say like is this exclusively kind of your idea? Because I've not seen something like this before.
I
Were you
haven't seen
inspired from
this either.
elsewhere?
I haven't seen this either.
Uh-huh.
So I can translate some of it. I won't translate all of it because
Yeah.
some of the beauty in the poem. But I just like to say a few things. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I like the poisonous poisson. Let's hear about
You like that one? Yes. Poisonous fish.
Uh-huh.
So this first word, verte, in Spanish means to see you. But if you split that word in two, verte means to look at T. So it's like a double entendre. It both means to look at you and to look at T.
Huh.
But this kind of sound, verte, is kind of repeated, but like an opposite with stir. So, seeing you stir the T. So it's spelled in the same way, but T in French is spelled like that. And that is green in another language, which looks just like to see. And estira, which means to stretch, is very similar to stir. So seeing you stir the green tea, green stretches. It's nonsense, but it's very beautiful because it uses different language and, what are they called? Phonemes that are very similar and borrowed.
Wow.
So I'll just talk about 2 lines that I really like a lot. So this one I like. Legos were my favorite toy growing up, and lejos means far. So throwing my Legos far, Legos lejos. And this is my next favorite one. Y no como perros ladrar mis ladrillos al cielo. So, and not like dogs bark my bricks at the sky. But bricks and ladrar are very similar. Ladrar, ladrillos, they kind of like share a root. So, and not like dogs bark my brick at the sky, but like whales be ballerinas that can sing what?
Ballenas, bailarinas.
Yeah. So that's that one poem. It's kind of playful.
Can I ask you something before you read another?
Sure.
And I don't want this to be a long question, and I don't mean it to inspire a long answer either. But we did this poetry event recently, and you said you made a post about how prose is very wonderful because it provides stepping stone to an idea. But poetry is even more wonderful because it's like taking away some of the stepping stones and it forces you to skip instead to the something to that effect you said. And I was just wondering, like, that's also an idea I haven't come across as well. And in itself, it's a really beautiful idea. But something so magnificent and spectacular as this poem, I'm just wondering, like, if you could elaborate on that kind of thought as well. And it's a really inspiring idea that you shared.
Well, I learned that the credit for that idea goes to my high school, and I dropped out of high school, and I had a very wonderful English teacher, Dan Saucedo, who taught me that. So the credit goes to him. You said you didn't want a long answer, so I'll just say briefly, I think that the process of sadhana is the same thing. That Krishna gives you a process like he gave yoga to Arjuna that is unpracticable, but you show your sincerity in trying to practice it, and then when the ground falls off below your feet and you just fall, Krishna catches you. So like, if we just keep doing what we do and, hoping that Krishna will help us, eventually we will find a dead end or some place where our mind can't go anymore, or our intelligence can't figure out, or that our process can't do. And then, but if we're sincere and we trust Krishna, like this obviously, like this is obviously a really good idea. Like it came from, my grandfather speaking different languages to me, which is a family that Krishna put me in. So it's like, if you just keep digging, you'll find fire. So I think that's the short answer.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Please share more. Please share more.
Yeah,
Okay,
how about one more poem?
Okay. So this is a very short one. I like it because it's a mistranslation of the first verse of Brahma Samhita. So let's look at Brahma Samhita first. Let's see.
Whoa, that was pretty psychedelic.
Inception.
Yeah, trippy stuff is happening.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, right. You saw yourself
multiple times.
All right. So here you go. So if anyone's not familiar with Brahma Samhita, the first verse in Sanskrit is Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So this is my mistranslation. Ha! Is one for me, Krishna, for this wandering to see great things. You are the sum of all sums, Govinda. A frog hops on a frog hopping. So I want to show you why it's a mistranslation. We bring in the thing over here. Wait, let's do it again. So vara, like just a vara in Spanish, means a wand. So is vara parama? Is that for me? Is one for me, Krishna? And when you have a dot underneath the H, you actually pronounce it like ha. So Krishna ha. So it's, really, it's like the first sentence is written itself. Is one for me, Krishna? And then the ha goes in front.
Wow.
Sachit Ananda Vigraha. This one was tough, but I know that anda in Spanish is to wander. So that's where you have wand and wander, and that's like, okay, you got to keep that. Ananda, a wandering, or as our dear host, Ananda. So sat, sa, I can't remember when, but I think it means with, or for, so for this wandering, V is to see, and graha, it's just when I said the word graha, it just made me think of like a big thing. So for this wandering to see
planet.
Cool. Graha.
Like this name Bhava Graha to grab, like grabbers. That's another word for planet also. Graha.
Oh, great. So let's change it. Thanks to the purport of Murari. To see great planets.
Yeah.
Is this one for me, Krishna, for this wandering to see great planets? You are the sum of all sums, Govinda. So adir looks a lot like to sum or to add. So an adir, to add to an adding. You are the sum of all sums, Govinda. Sarva kat rana. Rana in Spanish means frog. So a frog hops on a frog hopping. That's the mistranslation. And orison means prayer, and so this is like, a babble of a prayer.
Wow.
That's the second.
That's
one.
exciting.
You're on a next level. You're like, there it is. You've incredible. Like how mind blowing to like, first of all, there are people who get really into a thing, and that's exciting in itself, like if you're on the internet, you see someone that's like gets really good at a thing. I remember I went through this phase of watching like really young Asian kids doing incredible things, like there's this competition with like cups, and you've got to collapse them and stack them up again, or like a slinky, or like yo-yos, and there's people that master these things, and I'm like, that's interesting in itself. But then what's even more incredible about you is not only you've kind of mastered such a thing as language and words, which is something that we all use anyway. I don't think all of us use a yo-yo every day, so it's more of a novelty. But there's also like there's something mischievous, there's something creative, there's something substantial and spiritual, all in kind of one package, and it's so inspiring, so inspiring. So I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for like doing what you do and sharing it with us, especially sharing it with us today.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Yeah, writing is very nice. Krishna is writing in Spanish. The word for branch is rama. So you could not know anything about God, and you could say, "Ah, mira esa rama." So Krishna is like, he's like booby trapped the whole world to like to get you to be Krishna conscious. It's like all of it. And I think that like I have a suspicion that like if we all that's the point of Varnashram Dharma. Like if we all commit to the thing that is in our nature, we're gonna find him like beneath a trap door. Like we're gonna get to it.
Wow.
But yeah, all glories to Prabhupada.
I just to kind of take it back to that quote that you brought up from Bhaktivinoda Thakur of this world is the dictionary for the spiritual world, right? The kind of all signs point north, so to speak. As you're just mentioning, that there's so much embedded within this creation, right? That points us to experience more of the divine. And I used to conceptualize, or I still conceptualize it like this. My mother, when I went to Europe when I was in 8th grade, and she packed my bags for me. And I was there for about 3 weeks. And throughout my bags, as I would unpack my bag and pull out, different outfits or whatever, I'd find little sticky notes that she had kind of slipped in there. Right? Like these little love notes. And to know the author of the love notes, right? It may be one thing to recognize that there's love notes being planted throughout the universe, right? These little indications, these names, right? But then to know who that's naming, right? So I'm just really appreciating this point that this is this material world is like the descriptor. It's the ladder, to bring back that analogy, bringing us closer and closer if we just pay enough attention. So thank you so much for being with us today and being our friend and sharing all that you shared. You have a page on Instagram called Candlelight. What's it called? Candlelight
Nook.
Candlelight Nook. And are you posting there regularly?
Not now. I'm trying to make time to edit, to find time to shoot and edit videos. But yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe this is a good impetus. People will flood you with follows on Instagram, and because already what you have, even if he's not posting right now, but already what you've posted is magical, thought provoking, and very insightful, just as you are right now with us. So thank you for all that. I'm looking forward to having you on with us again and having your physical association at some point in life. We've only existed on screens, the three of us, actually. So I'm looking forward to when that jumps the dimension.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I didn't stay on topic or if I wandered a bit. I did. I do know that it's important to speak to like a little more like practical or like punctual things to inspire people. I wanted to talk about hope. I'm sorry that I ran.
I'm inspired, and you had the wand for wandering, so no problem.
Okay. All right, great.
Keli, any closing words on your end?
Well, I'm excited, like extremely excited, because this is the second installment of the Take Note podcast, and I mean, Bodhika as a platform is just genius, and so grateful for it existing. But talking of nooks, this is like, I want the Take Note podcast to be a real nook where people can come and nestle in and like where do you get a top-notch guy like Dhanaraj like reading such incredible original spiritual thought-provoking poetry in such a kind of like nice setting and anyway, so I'm just excited, and I'm very grateful to you, Dhanaraj, for accepting the invitation. And it'd be really nice to broadcast your glories again as soon as possible, isn't it, Ananda?
100%.
Well,
But
thanks for
I'm just,
having
why a nook and not a cranny?
me. Because I didn't want alliteration in that sense. Candlelight cranny. I wanted
Candlelight
candlelight.
cranny.
Yeah.
That sounds like a nice juice.
Ananda loves alliteration,
Like a
don't you?
I'd love alliteration.
It gets him going.
It gets me going.
Some people like fast cars, some people like wine and women. Ananda, alliteration, wow.
It's so cheap. It's so cheap. You can do it all day.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhus. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, with a very wonderful special guest. So please tune in, mark it on your calendar. We're very happy to been given this service, and let us know in the comment section below what you want to see, what you're looking for, what you think now. Spread the love, share, and follow the Boudica page. Thank you very much.